Welcome to the September or user update. I guess every month we slip a few days, so now we're at the end of the month. We'll try to do it at the end of October next time. Today's meeting will be a little bit shorter, perhaps. We have a couple of sort of a random tasting menu of items assorted here for people to understand a little bit what's going on in MIT.nano. You know, pretty much sort of we're jumping between a variety of different issues that are all interesting and useful, hopefully, but you know, we'll see how that goes. I want to start actually with new equipment highlights, and I just want to highlight two tools amongst all the other pieces of equipment that have recently come online. The first one is the reservation. This is a FIB-SEM with a variety of different irons, laser interferometer stage, up to 4-inch wafers. It's really more of a fab tool, a nano fab tool, rather than just a FIB. And I encourage you to reach out to Dr. Yang Wu, who's here from Wraith, as well as to Anna, to discuss project feasibilities. We're sort of still in the process of figuring out what amazing things can this tool do, a lot of new things, a lot of types of research perhaps that wasn't possible before. So contact us to learn more and see how this tool may allow you to do something completely new with your research work. The second tool I want to briefly highlight is the NanoScribe GT2 that has literally just come into the lab. We moved it into the lab 90 minutes ago. Some pictures from this morning here of uncrating, wiping down. This is a mission critical tool from Professor Carlos Portela from McE, who just joined the department in this fall. And so we're really excited to have both Professor Portela here and the tool, hosting the tool in the lab. It's a 2-photon 3D lithography system that'll sit in the soft lithography bay. In the last picture here, you see it already being placed into its final position. More details about that tool will come October, November, as we start ramping it up and qualifying it and so on. In general, though, as just a reminder, any updates about tools, we tend to post them on the facilities updates page of the Nano Users website. So you don't have to be here in this meeting or keep an eye out for emails. You can just go to nanousers.mit.edu, go to the facilities updates, and you'll be able to browse and see what has recently happened, pictures and short captions about stuff that went on. Now, those were new tools. We also, of course, are in the phase now of moving existing equipment over from Fab 39. And I want to show you just one example of this in the timeline there. This is similar to what we did last fall, where we moved the first phase move was primarily tools from EML. Now we're up to the other 2 floors, and it's going to get a little bit more involved than it was last year. So on this timeline, this starts with the design. The design is actually already completed. It's 84 pages of drawings and a crazy 240 pages of specifications. So it's a fairly large project. We're almost there at having an approximate schedule. Once we have that, we will digest it and give you some rough guidelines and timelines on this. But generally how this will proceed is that, we start construction and we pre-facilitate the location of the tool, right? So where it will go in Fab 12, all the different utilities, a whole bunch of different things that have to go into position first before we're ready to move the tool over. And that can take quite a significant amount of time. You see here a lot of different trades have to come together depending on the complexity of the tool. To get to the move, which is disconnecting it, decontaminating, moving it, reconnecting it, the move itself might be a 1 or 2 week period like we had last year. But then we have a phase before and a phase after that move, right? During the move, obviously the tool is down. Before the move, maybe 2 weeks before, we give you a heads up and the users a heads up. And 2 weeks is because that's usually the time people plan, but it's also the construction planning horizon, right? 2 weeks before, we know exactly that everything is done, that all the different chips have come into place, that we're ready to move the tool. In the approximate schedule before, we will have a more detailed, we will have more details, right? But when we get closer, you get a 2 weeks heads up and lots of other communications about it. Right. In the lead up to the move, we'll have to qualify the tool performance with the users, run through a checklist essentially. And then once the tool has been moved, it starts up. We're going to restart it, qualify it with the help of the users. And the goal of the involving the users here is to make sure that the tool performs as expected before and after, right? So that it allows people to continue their work. Ideally, the downtime is 1 to 2 weeks. Of course, after the, or during the ramp up, there may be sort of just a select pool of users helping to qualify it for another week or so. So it really depends on the type of equipment. If you notice the shaded area before the move, that's really the time where we may give priority to people that help us qualify the tool ahead of time, right? But it really just goes down at t=0 here. There's a lot of uncertainty with this schedule, and the primary uncertainty comes from the fact that in parallel, we're also getting the process cooling water construction done by MIT, right? That is scheduled to end in May, and of course, that is a project that we don't control. There's additional uncertainty. It's a very complex construction project by itself, and so depending on how that goes, that may potentially mean that we have to adjust our timelines as well. So this is really then just an example. Each tool right now has its own schedule. Most tools will move between February and May. And again, we'll let you know as soon as we have that rough first schedule in a couple of weeks. But I also want to, February to May timeframe here, I want to highlight the fact that if a tool requires cooling water, that may, of course, then delays or changes in the cooling water construction will then also directly impact when we move the tool, because we don't want to move the tool when there's no cooling water available, because that would mean it just sits there, right? So just as a quick heads up, we'll dive into a lot more detail in our weekly emails and in future community updates here. But this is just to give you a rough idea of what will happen in the next couple of months. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about gowning. We had some challenges in the last couple of weeks, fluctuations of gowning inventory that we've seen, and also sometimes a failure to adhere to the protocol that we had set out. Starting with the fluctuations, why do we not have enough gowns sometimes? So how does that even happen? Right, here's the process, basically. We have 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, we use the tool, we use the gowns in the first week, then they get sent out for laundry, come back the week after, and they get restocked, right? So you can see in this process here that the gowns are really traveling most of the time, or at least half the time. And another challenge that we've discovered recently is that during COVID now, there's occasional laundry delays, right? Where maybe the laundry service, because they have their own challenges and precautions with COVID, where they may not be able to complete a certain laundry bag in that 1 week time period, right? So sometimes we get the bag back the week after, and that of course then throws all of our calculations off. So the challenge of course is quantity. We currently have 2,500 items in stock of a variety of different sizes. We have identified here the types of sizes that we need more of, and we're in the process of adding that stock both for building 12 and 39. But again, unfortunately, lead times on those kind of items can be up to 12 weeks. So we're in the process of that, but it's not a problem that will be solved overnight due to that. Now, something we can do a little bit in the meantime in building 39, because the challenge there has been that users use both the second and the fourth floor at the same time, and that means they have 2 gowns, 1 on each floor, and that requires maybe another 15 to 20 gowns per week, or 40, 50 gowns. Almost half the inventory maybe goes into that. And so the goal then is to maybe just use 1 gown, put it in a plastic bag, transport them between the 2 floors, and that's a very similar protocol to what people already used to do for the E-beam FP on the 4th floor. So it isn't necessarily entirely new from conceptually. Critical part here, please do not transport gowns between the 2 fabs, 12 and 39. They're different laundry streams, and it just causes chaos. Right? So this is what we're doing with respect to fluctuations. With respect to protocol, we have noticed recently some challenges, primarily in TRL, the 4th floor, building 39, where users are over-engaging others on their lockers, taking other people's lockers, putting their stuff without respect of other people's gowning in the lockers, preventatively taking lockers without going to the lab just because they may go to the lab later. So a lot of aggressive or slightly inconsiderate behavior, and we're concerned about that. Just as a reminder, the protocol in sort of a simplified version here, you go into the lab, you then engage the locker, you store your gown in that locker you selected, and you write your name on the locker itself, right? Those are the kind of the key steps. We've outlined that in more details in an entire document that you can read. And we included in Friday's email. We'll include it again. We'll keep repeating it, I guess, a few more times until it becomes a little bit more intuitive for people. For TRL, we also have these acro bins. These are plastic storage bins that allow people to store their extra gowns in a bag because TRL only has 35 physical lockers, and we usually have more users than that. So that allows us to not limit the number of people in the lab. It allows us to get enough people in without running into problems with colliding lockers. Now, if we see or continue to see issues, here's our approach. Right? We take this very serious because it does impact the health or the safety of other users, not just the user that is infracting. First issue, email reminder, and we'll CC the PI for awareness. Second time, we'll have to have a Zoom discussion with the user and the PI to explain the process. And then the third time, if that still didn't work, we'll have to notify the monitoring and compliance committee from the DLC and make them aware of this. And I don't know, they may well recommend that the student should not be using the lab until they better understand the process and how to keep themselves as well as others safe by adhering to these protocols, right? Hopefully we don't have to do this very often. Hopefully by sending out these reminders, we get everything scored away, but that is our approach. Now, in the last couple of meetings in the last few months, we've started to have new user orientations. And I want to just give you a little bit of an update here. So again, shifting gears completely. Every single slide we shift gears totally. So hopefully you don't get whiplash. The asynchronous user orientations, how do we get people into the lab these days? And how do we improve that process? Right? In the past, it was like this in the fall until February. We have a classroom orientation, then a gowning tour, and for those users that have never set foot in a clean room before, a quick start, a one-day hands-on training on running a process. Right? That was all pre-COVID. That was classroom in person. In August, when we started ramping up and when we started having orientations again, we took that whole classroom setting and we turned that into a Zoom session. And that really was a Zoom marathon. That was, as all marathons are, exhausting for those participating, and in this case also exhausting for those watching. But we trained 50, 60 people through this method and allowed us to understand how do we improve this, how do we split this apart and optimize it. And so now, in the last 2 weeks, for the first time a week and a half ago in an orientation, actually last week in an orientation, we changed this whole thing completely. Right? We now have a Zoom sprint. Right, a short orientation meeting where we can say hello to the new students, we can answer questions, and we can help get them started. So it still has a bit of an in-person component to this, but this whole long list of lecture type material has now been offloaded into shorter videos that we've produced. Right? 5 to 15-minute videos that people can then watch at their leisure at any time prior to showing up to the orientation. This is obviously nice because it's asynchronous. It allows people to complete these things on their own time. The one thing that we haven't quite converted yet, in the process of that, are the emergency preparedness and the chemical process training. Those are still 2 in-person 1-hour Zoom type of lecture components that sit outside of the scope. Right? But hopefully this allows us to get people into the lab, give them the material without exhausting them in a 2-hour session. Now, once a user has completed the orientation, is ready to use the lab, how does that work? Well, I want to give you a little bit of an overview, and this is really our goal, right? This is what we strive to do. We hopefully succeed at this sometimes, and sometimes we don't succeed, and we'll try to improve. But the process is roughly as follows, right? You do the orientation. Then we figure out what tools you need to use to do your process. You create a process flow, maybe even short loops to allow you to do individual components of that process. start the training, and you're ready to go to use the lab. This looks like an overwhelming set of steps, but it actually doesn't have to be. And I want to give you one example here. So again, an example of how we meet the goals that we're trying to set, and hopefully that can be the model for what we're trying to do. And it's really an interaction between the user and MIT.nano in the following way, right? So after the orientation on the particular date here, we had a process discussion with the user, right? So a Zoom session for 30 minutes to an hour, we discuss what is it that the user is trying to do, what devices are they going to accomplish. Now they've done research before, so we didn't have to explain in as great of a depth perhaps as with a completely new to any cleanroom user, but it was a good start, and that allows us to then help the user to create a first version of a process that we, and it was a fairly complicated process with 100 steps and 11 mask layers. So this was not, one thing, use one tool kind of deal. We can then send it back to the users. We can discuss and see, is this what they need? Is this appropriate? Did we choose the right tools together? If the answer is yes, then we can create a number of short loops. And the short loops can help because in a long process, it's often not much better to do small chunks, right? All of the individual process component, particular type of edge, a particular kind of lithography step can be outsourced into shorter loops that the user can then submit as individual processes. And in this case, then, because we work together, we can review this, we can pre-approve this, and the next day, then the user was ready to start the training, right? So by this example, this is what we're trying to achieve. And sometimes we will not be able to do this, but our goal is to achieve something like this, right? You can see a very short amount of time between talking about what the user is trying to accomplish to when they are ready to start the training. Now, what this requires is sustained enthusiasm, right? Clearly, in this chain, because we essentially have a constant back and forth between the user and us, if that chain breaks, if there are excessive delays in getting back to people or the user getting back to us, it would never be as fast as we could do it otherwise, right? And then just as a follow-up, over the next 10 days after the first training, the user actually trained on a large number of small and big tools, a total of 17 tools with 8 different specialists, right? And so that was really exciting. And it also highlights something that's really important, right? That this kind of getting people into the lab is not a single person heroic effort or anything. It's really the concerted effort of everybody in the lab, right? You can see 8 different people helped train the person on 17 tools, right? So it's really the whole team of specialists coming together and helping make this happen. And that's really exciting and awesome to see. So again, hopefully this is what we'll always try to strive towards. This is our goal for getting people into the lab. And as we're talking about user training, I want to take a step back and look back at the training activity overall over the last years and how our post-COVID training compares to the pre-COVID training times. Right, so here's data for the last 10 years or so, the number of trainings per week in light blue here. And then a 3 months average overlaid in the light blue line. Right? So you can see it's relatively steady. You see seasonality, right? New Year, people don't tend to get trained very often because nobody's around, students nor staff perhaps. But a pretty consistent line over the years. And question is, what happened after COVID? What happened since August? Right? Did we see more training or less? Did training come to a halt? Well, obviously during shutdown it was 0, but then after the shutdown you can see a rapid ramp up in the number of trainings, right? To the point, if you look at both the average and the spot data here, we're now at a level that is significantly higher in terms of training where we used to be in the past. Right? So what it means is it's really, really busy. And we appreciate people's patience in trying to figure out between equipment needs that the staff has to repair tools and maintain them and training new users. We appreciate your understanding for people being really busy at this point in time, right? And why is it so busy? Well, we have increased training activity because sort of a combination of things, right? It's both new users coming to campus, it's new tools that have come to the lab in the last months, but then also, of course, the tools that have moved where students want to get trained on as well, right? So that whole combination really means, that's why we're really, really busy at this point. right? And it's exciting to see, and it's exciting to see people come to the lab. At the same time, this is also, increased activity despite all the precautions we take with COVID, right? So it makes it even harder and even more inefficient in some sense to coordinate than it was before, because you can no longer just roam the building and find the staff to talk to them, right? So now it's a lot more back and forth involved. So I want to just quickly close with a couple of resources before we open up to Q&A. Resources for you to utilize, and some you may know and some you may have forgotten or never heard about. Any questions, send email to MIT.nano feedback. We got the website, Nano users, broad updates. Well, that's where you are right now, so unless you dialed in by accident. Weekly Q&A every Friday. We send out questions and announcements to MIT.nano Fab users, and those are questions that we essentially generate from, find my pen here, from the MIT.nano feedback site. It's for, that way. If you're not a Fab user and you want to be on that, let us know and we'll add you. It goes to Fab users by default. We got weekly office hours every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Go to this link over here to sign up, or not to sign up, but at least find the Zoom link, because we don't want random people to show up, so you have to have some MIT credentials. Process discussions, if you want to discuss your process, how to improve your work in the lab, either come to the office hours or email us and we'll set something up outside of that. And then our random little data collection, Fab Humidity, is still up and running. So feel free to utilize that. The other thing is the Building 39, I guess, Mech Week, just as a quick announcement so you don't get surprised by that. It's November 16 to 23rd. So that's something to keep in mind when you're using Building 39.